Welcome to Business Spotlight. I'm Gary Crosby. I'm delighted to be joined today by Richard Sumner. I've been looking at your website, Richard, and I think you can help me, and I think you can help all of my clients, and you can probably help all of the small businesses in the local area. So I'm delighted that you've joined us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So let's just start with a bit of context. Tell us who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it, Richard.
Well, yeah, it's Richard's name. I'm originally from South Africa, which people might be able to recognize the accent now, living in Peterborough. The company is called Spreadsheet Solutions, and I actually make spreadsheets for businesses, usually custom spreadsheets, but I do have some standard templates online. And if you connect with me on social media and you keep an eye out, in 2 months' time, you'll see that I'll be posting some pictures of a birthday cake, as the company will be 10 years old in 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite an achievement, 10 years. I mean, you think about the number of businesses that fail in the first few years, that's 10 years is pretty serious stuff. Well done.
Thank you. Do you know what? I read the books just like everyone else did, as far as, how many businesses fail and how long it takes to get there. And it took me slightly longer than I think it should have.
Yeah.
But I also think that I was there aren't a lot of people who do what I do. So, if you start a business as an accountant, people already automatically know what your role is and what you can offer them.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I had a bit of educating to do as far as what it was, how it worked, how people benefited from it. And I think that's what took a little bit of extra time. But I mean, now at the 10-year mark, I can safely say that I've had a good number of years where it beat being employed hands down. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I think I'm completely unemployable now.
Yeah.
So let's think about the factors in that longevity then. What is it you think that's allowed you to go beyond all those points where lots of businesses fail and to keep going? What are the main factors in that?
I was thinking about this recently, and I think there's a time to change in business. There's a time to adapt. There's a time to learn. But there's also a time to be stubborn and stick to your guns. And I think finding out which of those times are which is key. If you're onto something that's not going to win and you stick to it, you can waste valuable time. If you're onto something that takes time and you just got to stick with it, you need to be patient and not change. And knowing the difference between the two, I think, has been key for me. And being stubborn when I need to be stubborn and just going, no, it will work. You've just got to stick at it. And then other times where I've done something and it hasn't worked and gone, that's not going to work, get rid of it and try something else. I think those two have been key for me. And I also think people's attitude as well towards, business and how you deal with it, and, how generous you are, and all those kind of things come together. And I think it all works, in your favor if you get that right. And I mean, I made lots of mistakes when I started, but I think learning from those as I've gone along has got me to where I am today.
And that's prompted two questions to me. One is about the learning that you've done, but I think the first one was, has it always been Spreadsheet Solutions as it is today, or has there been a sort of an evolution of the services that you've offered?
The services have somewhat evolved to a point where I used to offer some training as well. I knew I wasn't training material. I haven't got the patience to sit trying to teach people how to do it. And I eventually stopped. As the other increased, I stopped that. I did think that the online templates, the ready-made templates would eventually take over. They haven't. I'm not particularly worried about that because I actually quite enjoy the customized work. So it shifted slightly, but generally it's been the same from the start as far as what I've planned to do. I think the mistakes I've made are kind of the non-spreadsheet parts of the business. I've had a big learning curve.
And so let's touch on those learnings then. When you look back over that 10 years, what would you say are the sort of main learnings in terms of making the business successful?
Do you know what? I actually wrote a book, which is not like me, because I think the year I wrote the book, I wrote more books than I read. And it's called 40 Aspects of Starting and Growing a Business. And I actually wrote 40 chapters, and each chapter was a different area of business and a different lesson I'd learned. and given the readers some take-home points to go and think about. But I think the biggest one for me was marketing. I think I've always been the kind of back office, sort out the admin, make sure you're running efficiently kind of person. So I had that probably overkill sorted. But I just watched other marketers and quite honestly took the mick a bit, and put out some content and watch the sales roll in.
Yeah.
And I was all ready for these sales to come rolling in, and they never came rolling in. And to try and figure out how to market yourself, how to go about educating other people as to what you do, how it helps them.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it, but it took me a number of years to get that right.
Yeah, interesting. So, published author, successful business owner for 10 years. Let me project you back in time to day one of the business, knowing what you know now. What advice are you going to give Richard way back then on day one?
I think the advice I'd give me is I don't need to be as organized as I thought I did to get started.
Right.
And also just to lighten up a little bit from a marketing point of view. I think what I did at the beginning was I tried to promote the business, and I tried to sound important, and I tried to kind of, people said to me, "Oh, don't just say you make spreadsheets because you're selling yourself short. Tell people you revolutionize their process systems." But people don't understand what that means. They don't know what that entails, and it all just comes out as gobbledygook. And eventually, when I actually just said, when I make some awesome spreadsheets, if you want better spreadsheets, get hold of me. People went, "Oh, that's what you do." And I think I would not dumb it down, but just say it as it is. Let my personality come through. I would try to kind of be serious before, whereas now I just inject the same humor as I would normally, and kind of let me come through. And the more natural that is, the more success I see. And I would have just told myself, do that, but and then be patient, because it takes time. It takes time, and it will come.
Yeah, and it depends where you come from as well beforehand. I mean, I certainly know in my profession, a lot of coaches say one of the biggest things you can do is let go of your ego. It doesn't matter what you did before or how important you were or any of that stuff. You've got to let it go and just be you. So that's a great lesson from 10 years of business. So if we look forward a little bit now and think about the challenges that the environment presents now, what do you think of when you think about your clients and think about business in general, what are the big challenges that small businesses are facing just now?
I've got small businesses. I genuinely, I'm probably going to take a bit of backlash for saying this, but I think people's minds actually cause more trouble than anything else. And I think there's a lot of stuff to be afraid of at the moment. Now, I'm not saying that those risks and those things aren't real, because there's definitely real things going around that people have to navigate. However, I think our fear of those things can often cripple us more than the problems themselves. And I think, with the cost of living crisis, and obviously all the results of the issues from the pandemic and the energy and all the rest of it. Now, again, those are very real problems, but I think a lot of businesses get themselves into a negative mindset because of those. And that negative mindset, from my point of view, can be far more destructive than the actual problem sometimes. And
how do you see that? I mean, I see people who have got profoundly positive mindsets and occasionally quite negative mindsets. When you're dealing with your clients, what does that look like and feel like? How does that come across?
Well, I don't necessarily always hear about that, because I'm generally quite focused with the client as far as what they need the spreadsheet to do, rather than how things are going in general. But I kind of say to people, you need to make the most of what's going on. Yes, there are problems. Yes, we have to overcome these. But we can choose to overcome problems with a positive mindset or a negative one. And yes, there are times where you're going to fail regardless, but there are certainly times where you will fail with a negative mindset and you won't fail with a positive mindset. And I'd rather fail having had a positive mindset than going with a negative mindset and set myself up for it. You know, and yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the more things change. Yes, I've got a very small business working from home, or so I don't face a lot of the issues other business owners face. But I've just kind of adapted and changed things as I've gone along, and just kept believing that what I'm doing is helping people, it is providing a difference. And I mean, sometimes when I get feedback from some of my clients, their feedback for me, I'm not quite sure how to say this properly, but their feedback for me exceeds what I think I've given to them. And it's usually it's quite good, because I think, well, I somewhat helped that person, and they're running around on LinkedIn telling everyone how absolutely marvelous I am. And I'm thinking, well, it wasn't that good a job. I don't know what they're on about. But it's nice because, you know, you're making a difference to people and providing what they need. And, you know, a happy client on social media is worth its weight in gold, really.
Yeah, and I think you're right to say that, you know, we shouldn't, as professionals who help other people, we shouldn't be judging the value that we give them. You know, let's let them judge the value, and they'll tell you, I'm sure, if it's not what they need. Did you put anything around mindset in the book? Was it part of the 40 lessons?
I can't remember what the 40 lessons were. I think I did. I touched on all sorts of things. I touched on, you know, working from home, attitude, you know, who you partner with, what kind of business you should have. So there were some kind of very technical chapters as far as, you know, what to do in specific situations, but then there are other just general things to think about and what have you, you know, based on even some of the things I hadn't necessarily done, but just based on people's, you know, questions and comments and things on social media as far as what they're struggling with. I think you've got two camps of business owners out there. I think you've got the do it and see what happens. And then you've got the plan it to death. And then eventually do it. And I'm very much the plan it to death and eventually do it kind of person. So I need to be more do it and see what happens. But I think there are a lot of do it and see what happen people who need to just take a minute and think about it before they go rushing into things.
I mean, I spent a lot of my adult life in the Air Force, and I remember one boss said to me, perfect is the enemy of the good. So don't keep polishing it until it's perfect. Just, you know, let's get it out there and make it happen. So yeah, great advice. So thinking about your business, as you say, small business, what are you planning over the next few years? Where do you want to take it?
I say this not from a point of arrogance, but just from a point of being in a place where I want to be. And I think I've done a lot of the growth I wanted to do. I don't want to go past a certain point. I don't want this to become a, you know, managing 12 staff kind of deal. I want it to be me, and this is a lifestyle business. And so I wouldn't say I'm quite at the point where I'm capping it, but I'm certainly at the point where it's really just some fine tuning to go. I don't have major growth aspirations. I'm just kind of in the place where I want to maintain it and potentially do a little bit more of the kind of work I want to do and a little bit less of the work I don't want to do. But really, it's where I've planned it to be now, and it's just a little bit more growth, and then it's a case of, you know, just maintenance type of thing. So there's not an awful lot of growth plans for the future from that point of view.
And do you think there's any, I mean, thinking about the big hoo-ha we've had over the last 3 or 4 months about artificial intelligence and chat GPT and all that sort of stuff, and technology's obviously moving on all the time and things like that. Are there any threats out there that, you know, make people turn away from the traditional spreadsheet? There's an app for pretty much everything. What kind of threats are you facing?
No. Every time someone says this is a spreadsheet killer, what they mean is, we hope this will be a spreadsheet killer, but it won't be. And I'm not saying there won't be anything like this in the future, but I mean, this chat GPT thing, I've seen it answer some questions on what formulas to use in spreadsheets and things. And occasionally it gets it right. Most of the time it doesn't. It gets it right from a point of view, if you try it, it will work. But it doesn't take into consideration other work that it's tying in with, that it needs to run with. And I think the beauty of spreadsheets is I could find 5 people like myself who make spreadsheets, and you can give us all the same brief,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll all come back to you with 5 with different spreadsheets.
Yeah.
There are different ways of tackling everything. There are pros and cons of doing each different method. And I think from that point of view, there's so much creativity that goes into it, and so much understanding and relating the spreadsheet to the client's particular needs.
Yeah.
That in order for you actually to tell something like ChatGPT how to do all of that, it's easier just to make it.
Mm. Mm.
So I'm not, I mean, spreadsheets have been around since probably around about the time when I was born. I don't think they're going in anywhere in a hurry. And all the software programs that claim to replace them,
Yeah,
I think are really just wishful thinking, to be honest.
so what's the highest impact product that you do when you look across the businesses? Is it process and system improvement? Is it CRM type stuff? What has the real impact in small business?
It completely varies, and this is one of the beauties. This is one of the reasons why I made it so hard to market myself. But this is one of the joys of the job, because every time I get a call from a client to do a new project, invariably it's completely new. Now, yes, there are similarities, but there's so much variety. My background's in project management, so I'm quite keen on the when are things due. If this needs to be done by then, it needs to be ordered now kind of projects.
Yeah.
But CRMs are quite big. Data analysis, massive. Everyone's exporting CSVs from all over the place, coming to me saying, I've got this raw data. Can we please analyze it and produce a report or dashboard or something? So those I do often. Time trackers, financial analysis, process tracking as well. If people are following the same process with all their jobs, setting up a spreadsheet to go, well, you did that part of the process 3 days ago. This is due tomorrow. Is it done yet? Those kind of things as well. So there's really my imagination, the client's imagination, and my technical ability are really, and Excel's limits are the only real limits we've got. And once I understand what the client needs and I'm able to put it down that Excel can handle it and I can handle it, then we go with it.
So a couple more questions before we wrap up. I'm interested in the advice that you would give to anybody else starting a business right now. You've seen lots of different clients, you've had your own journey and things like that. What would you say to someone who was starting a business today about what's going to help them succeed?
I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn, a little bit of, hoorah, kind of quit your day job, go self-employed. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to put the brakes on that a little bit and just say, you people have to consider what it's like to be self-employed. Because yes, I'm in a place now, as I'm sure you are, where we kind of worked ourselves into a place where we actually are employable, and we'd have no intent to go back to employed. No. But I can tell you, in the first 5 years of running this business, it was a daily temptation. And when you get to the 23rd of the month and you haven't got enough money for salaries, that weighs on you. It weighs on you big time. And people underestimate the graft at the beginning of setting up a business. So what I would say is, if you take off the rose-tinted spectacles, see things for what they are, and understand from a business owner what the pros and cons are, and are you actually up for that challenge? If you are, then there's a lot of action. These are what I wrote in the book, all these different aspects to consider. Go with it, be stubborn, take it on, give it a good go. But if that's not for you, walk away at the beginning and don't, because it's quite a soul destroying type of thing. If you set out for a business, get to the 3-year mark and have to pack it in and go back and get, and it can take its toll on people. And I mean, I was literally sitting around making the decision to quit a number of times. Fortunately, I'm just way too stubborn for my own good, and I wouldn't let myself. But it really was hard at the beginning, and I think people need to understand that, rather than going in expecting that they're going to start a business and and it's going to be flourishing after week 3, because that just doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen. No, no. Actually, while you were talking there, another question popped into my head, which was around, if you're starting up a business on your own, whether or not you ever felt a sense of isolation. Sometimes I find small business owners, they leave a team environment and then they end up, working in an office on their own, and it can become very isolating. Have you ever experienced that?
Do you know what, Gary? I say this tongue in cheek because I don't really mean it, but I don't really like people, so I'm quite happy. No, that's not true. I like interacting with people. I certainly do, but for me, I always had the opposite problem. I'll be sitting in an office trying to work, and someone will want to talk about the football or the rugby or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge rugby fan and a football fan, but when I'm there to work, I'm there to work. And actually, for me to be able to be kind of isolated in the sense of it has made me far more productive. And I don't actually miss the office environment too much. But I do know people who have gone similar routes to me and really, really miss it, and end up actually trying to go and work in a cohabitation kind of office environment to get that vibe. A lot of creators, I think, struggle with that type of thing.
Yeah.
Because dare I say, a lot of technical people are usually quite happy to be, in a room by themselves with high-speed internet and a big screen, and that's all we really need.
Yeah, great. So just before we finish off, is there anything coming up, anything happening in business, anything you want to share with people before we end up?
Well, no, I mean, as I said, in 2 months' time, I've ordered a custom birthday cake for Spreadsheet Solutions, so we'll see how that comes out, and I'll hopefully be posting pictures in 2 months. But the only real other thing I can say is that people are wasting time trying to go on YouTube and Google and all the rest of it to try and figure out what formulas are to make their own spreadsheets. That time that you're wasting, I could do it in a fraction of the time, and obviously charge for it. But if they work out their hourly rate of what they're losing making those spreadsheets, it's always going to be cheaper and more efficient to get me to make it, and it's going to be better than what they can make. And I'd rather actually help them out, let them get the spreadsheet working properly than them wasting their time. But yeah, as far as the business is concerned, looking forward to reaching the 10-year mark, and hopefully have a cake to celebrate it.
Fantastic. I mean, published author, 10-year business owner.
And in fact, believe it or not, an artist. I've actually sold art that I've made in Excel.
Right.
Before. There's a link on my website. I'll send it to you afterwards. But I've made some art coloring in different cells in Excel, and actually have sold a few of them, and exhibited on an online art exhibition. So artist, published author, and business owner, and I still don't really know what I'm doing. So.
Stop it. I'm starting to feel inadequate.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Look, Richard, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing the lessons and where you're going with business, and for taking part in the business spotlight. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.